Well, joining us with Markets Now is Dr. Derrell Peel, OSU Extension Livestock Specialist. And let's talk about the cattle on feed report. The USDA numbers came in here on Friday on feed, 98.5%, placements 97.4, and marketings at 97.5. Pretty close to expectations, weren't they?
Yeah, it really was. No big surprises in this report. There's always a range. The placements on average came in just a smidge above the average, but well within the range of expectations. Marketings were also a smidge above the average guess pre-report estimate, but also within the range. And when you factor those two against each other, the on-feed total was just about exactly as anticipated going into the report.
And that on-feed number has been coming down, the last 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, we have, pretty consistently now seen, 1.5% to 2% down on a month-to-month basis. It's not a fast process. We're slowly moving that number down. Frankly, I expected to start seeing that more consistently, several months ago. But I think we're into it now. We're still seeing some month-to-month variation, as is typical in these monthly reports. Placements can jump around a lot based on weather, based on just weekly timing, the end of the month versus the first of the next month. So, placements were down a little bit. They may pop back up briefly, but in general, we're working our way into tighter and tighter feeder supplies.
Right. So when will the tightest of those numbers come? They're still ahead of us, but when's the hole?
The hole really comes once we decide to really get active with herd rebuilding, and that means heifer retention. And that's going to be a relatively lengthy process. We'll start it. I don't think it's going to be really dramatic. I think it'll be relatively slow. I think it's actually happening now, but fairly slow. So the tightest supplies may not actually happen even in 2025. They may not happen until 2026.
When we look at the state-by-state breakdowns in terms of the placements, Texas was only at 94%. Is that still a function of the border being closed to Mexican feeders?
That's probably part of it. Certainly, as we go forward, if this border stays closed, we're going to notice the lack of those supplies a bit more. And I suspect that is part of it. Otherwise, it's just kind of the Southern Plains has been perhaps a little bit tighter on numbers. And so, it's a combination of those things.
Great. So we said kind of a benign report. Do you anticipate any market reaction one way or the other when we open again on Tuesday?
Well, it's always difficult to predict. You never know what markets are going to do. I would not expect much of a market reaction to this. We do have a holiday weekend, which gives us another day to sort of think about the report. So I really don't expect any market reaction. I don't see any surprises in this. Barring any other information that were to happen between now and then, but I don't think this report causes a lot of reaction.
No, and we did have some higher cash trade this week. We had a higher weekly close on the futures. And so is this starting to negate that big key reversal that we put in?
I think so. I mean, the key reversal represented kind of a combination of short run factors there and some repositioning of people in this market. Obviously, the futures are still kind of playing catch up to the cash market, and maybe there's a sentiment that we need to, that it needs to change. But the fundamentals still support these higher prices, and I think they're going to continue to support even higher prices as we go forward.
All right, so I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times, and you don't think the top necessarily is in this market.
I do not. If you look at and think about the last cattle cycle we went through, the highest prices and the tightest squeeze came about a year to a year and a half after we started herd rebuilding. We don't have any evidence for sure that we've started herd rebuilding. If we have, it's just barely. So I think all of that's still several months ahead of us.
Thanks so much for joining us, Derrell Peel, OSU Livestock Marketing Specialist. Thanks for joining us here on Markets Now.
You're very welcome.